It was just a matter of time before I was found out. The apple may not have fallen far from the tree, but I was certainly no lawyer. A name, I had to give her a name, or the jig was up, something she could hang her hat on. It's Vice, Vice, baby. It's Vice, Vice, baby.
Morning, good evening, good night, everyone. How are you guys doing? It is currently 10:43 p.m. in good old Utah, and it is I, your host, Vice Vice Baby. How are you guys doing? Marloca, hola, how are you doing? DK Lucas, one, I miss Jeff. Well, I'm glad you're here. We all miss him. Janice MB, hello, I'm only here for a few minutes. No problem, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate you. Tonight, we will be reading another couple chapters of Megan's Believe Evidence, um, the death of due process from Salome to hashtag Me Too. So, last time we finished part one, which was do, 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 do. Part one was hysterical harpies throughout literature and history. And now, part two, we'll be diving into lying wretches from the modern age. So, um, so here is the usual disclaimer I give everyone. Well, first of all, the smoke that you see is from a diffuser. I'm not smoking. There's no cigar. There's nothing going on. So disclaimer, I usually read in advance to correctly pronounce words. But guess what? I was busy and I totally forgot to do that. So my reading will probably be more horrible than it usually is. So keep that in mind. I am not a reader. I only barely started reading since I started streaming on YouTube. So there's that. And I'll probably read two chapters today. So I'll catch up on chat right now, read a chapter, catch up on chat again, read the second chapter, and um catch up on chat the last time and will end for the night. So, Marloka, I miss Jeff also, and I still laugh at him. And Megan with the Mastodon drive thing. Mastodon drive thing? Do you mean the trucking stream, or is there a different drive thing, or is it just not related to driving? I just totally posted in the Lego stream thinking it was this one. Well, either way, it's a good stream. Okay, let us begin. Everyone grab some drinks and some snacks and enjoy watching me struggle to read. It was a court case in Otter Creek. Oh, gotcha. The what the hell's case? Okay. Part 2. Lying Wretches from the Modern Age. Victoria Price and Ruby Bates. Never let it be said that America doesn't know what a lynch mob is. The very idea that we have talking heads on CNN, ABC, and even Fox News denying vociferously that any mob action is occurring as we watch senators run out of restaurants and thugs take over Portland Street and beat up old people for trying to drive through their protests is unbelievable. It makes me wonder if these news outlets have ever reviewed their own records written before 1960 or if they're just incredibly bad liars. The country has a shameful history of injustice and mob action in the Jim Crow South. Lynch mobs were the favorite tool used against uppity blacks or any black person on whom racists want to pin on a crime. One particular story of the Scottsboro Boys stand out in history as one of the greatest injustices in America. What went wrong in northern Alabama in 1931? Two wretched white women tried to rape and nearly lied 9 Negroes into the electric chair. Sure, they couldn't have done it if the jurors had not believed them. But once those poor white Southerners heard two white women charge that black men had ravished them, they went out of their minds, lost what little self control they had to begin with. Rape fantasies often had such irresistible verisimil- verisimilitude that even the most experienced judges were misled in trials of innocent men accused of rape by hysterical women. Alabama in the 30s was a terrifying place for black Americans. Any black man accused of harming a white woman in any way would surely get death, whether through an unjust trial or through an illegal mob. It seems impossible that under those conditions, any black man would get near a white woman for any reasons unless they had a death wish. On top of the extreme racial segregation and prejudice, the Depression was in full swing and everyone was hungry and desperate, but no one more so than young black men. The Scottsboro Boys were 9 black boys, aged 13 to 19, who were riding on top of a train to look for work. Any work they would be able to find would come to them last. Blacks were the last hired, and the first fired at the time. Some of them knew one another, others didn't. They got into a tussle with some white train hoppers, who the black boys ended up throwing off the train. None of them had any clue what the repercussions would be, or I'm sure they would have put up with the white boys' harassment. As they pulled into the next station, they were greeted by an armed posse waiting to take them to the sheriff. Unbeknownst to the boys, there were two white girls, Victoria Price and Ruby Bates, who had been traveling with the white boys who accused the black boys of gang rape out of meanness and spite. Word had already spread in the small town of Scottsboro, and a mob had already formed. The sheriff had to call in the National Guard to stop the mob from breaking down the jail door and murdering the boys. Anyone with experience in the American court system knows that court actions takes years. If you're lucky, decades, if you're not. But that's not how things worked in 1930s Alabama. They were tried and sentenced in 3 days. The boys were held without bail. Local lawyers refused to defend them. Local newspaper whipped up a mob spirit, and the judge scheduled the first trial for horse swapping day, ensuring a tremendous crowd. 10,000 people, most of them armed with rifles and revolvers, poured into a town of 1,500. Sheriff beat the boys in an effort to extract confession, but they did not confess. On the night of the first day of the trials, however, Clarence Norris was taken out of his cell alone, threatened, and badly beaten. He turned state's evidence the next day. Girls who accused them were known prostitutes with sordid pasts. It is very likely that they saw their chance to be treated well by Alabama society, having spent their lives on the outside, living in the poorest of the poor black neighborhoods, outcast to their own race. Before their allegation of rape, Price and Bates were considered trash. One of them had been arrested for hugging a black man in public. These girls were raised with the black community. They played with black children, drank with black friends, and had sex with black boys. And yet, they turned on the boys on the train for some crumbs from the race hierarchy of Alabama. Nothing they had done previously was admi- admissible. The jury was not allowed to hear that they were prostitutes. Their tales of violent rape were not backed up by any medical evidence except for both of them having sperm inside them, not unusual for whores. Victoria Price was a camera hound. She loved the spotlight, and during the trial she often brought down the house with her ribald sense of humor and jokes. While 9 teenage boys were fighting for their lives, she was playing a one-woman show on the stand. The case gained national attention and interested the Communist Party, whose legal defense came to the aid of the boys. However, as communists often do, they ended up alienating most of the people who could have helped get the boys a fair trial. Instead of using a system, the communists tried to wreck the system by threatening judges, staging violent protests, and generally causing uproar. They never learn. Had the communists been honest, intelligent, and wise, Walter White of the NAACP suggested they might have made great gains, but he contended they were not. They turned Alabama officials against the defendants with their hostile telegrams and alienated the growing body of liberal white Southerners. They attacked the NAACP, breaking up its meetings and insanely charging that the members were in league with the lyncher bosses of the South and plotting to murder the Scottsboro martyrs. Jeez, that sure sounds familiar. It is almost certain that the Kavanaugh mob activists turned off many people who would otherwise be on their side politically. But there's only so much incivility Americans can stand. We are law-loving people. We understand that the law is what stands between us and anarchy. Why is it that communists always think breaking windows and hurting people is the best way to get justice? A better way to get what you want is to get to the polls and vote for people who share your views. When you lose, you don't go get to burn the places down. You pick yourself up and try again next time. The NAACP at the time was making good inroads through the justice system. But the Scottsboro boys, on the advice of their parents, hired the communists. It was a big mistake. With the national attention, Director Hollis Ransdell decided to travel to Alabama from New York to find out what she could about the case. Race relations in the North in comparison to the South were night and day. Most white people in the North had no concept of what life was like for black people in the Deep South. I remember my dad telling me that he took a train from Chicago to Florida in 1954 and was shocked at how open the racial prejudice was. Chicago was no model of racial harmony by any means, but there was no forced segregation in the North. No one ever told him what it was like in the South. And at 14, on his family vacation, he was confused and uncomfortable as black people stepped off the sidewalk to allow his family to pass by in small towns in Alabama and Georgia. He did not understand the signs telling black people to go around back to use the bathroom or buy food. While racism was certainly an issue in Chicago, the blatant hatred and unequal treatment of black Americans in the South was so shocking to white boy from North that he still remembers it to the day with disgust. Ransdell was similarly aghast at what she witnessed in Alabama. In 3 days' time, 8 Negro boys, all under 21, 4 of them under 18, and 2 of them 16 or under, were hurried through the trials with which conformed only in outward appearance to the letter of the law. These 8 boys, little more than children, surrounded entirely by white hatred and blind, venomous prejudice, were sentenced to be killed in the electric chair at the earliest possible moment permitted by law. It is no exaggeration, certainly, to call this a legal lynching. Ransdell's observations as an outsider were fascinating. Ransdell found Scottsboro a charming southern village of 2,000, situated in the midst of pleasant rolling hills. The people seemed mild mannered, with kind, easy faces, friendly to one another and to her, until she began asking about the trials. Then the pleasant faces stiffened, laughing mouths grew narrower and sinister, soft eyes became cold and hard. Gentle and compassionate people were suddenly transformed by blind, unreasoning antipathy, so that their lips parted and their eyes glowed with lust for the blood of black children who had done nothing to them and may not have done anything to anyone. In those glowing eyes, all Negroes were brutes, brutes who could be kept in their place and away from white women only by ruthless oppression. These observation ring true today in the faces of people who seem like normal, nice people until they find out they're talking to a Republican. Just try and tell someone suffering from Trump derangement syndrome that you voted for the bad orange man. I don't recommend it. The mob screaming women outside the courthouse during the Kavanaugh hearings are just such people. They have allowed their hatred of President Trump to blind them totally to all rationality. Instead, they want to destroy any person even remotely connected to Trump, even though that person has done nothing to them. Brett Kavanaugh has not harmed any of those howling beasts. He has not laid one finger on them, and yet they screamed for his blood on the shoddy evidence of one woman with immense amount of privilege. Just like Price and Bates, no one cared what was in Dr. Ford's background. No one cared if she was lying or not. It was enough that she told them what they wanted to hear to get them the result that they wanted. It's not dissimilar at all from a 1930s racist Alabama sham court, only instead of race being the catalyst. It's a war between the sexes based on politics. If Kavanaugh had been a Democrat, the shouting Gorgons wouldn't have been there. Bill Clinton and Ted Waitress Sandwich Kennedy could confirm this. But Republicans are bad, and Republican men especially are bad, and worthy of any insult or punishment, whether deserved or not, that can be heaped on their heads. Much like racist whites in the South, the feminist left feels completely justified in their hatred for Republican men. They've decided that they are less than human, and as such deserve any indignity imaginable. There's a feminist writer at the New York Times whose Twitter history is awash in the most disgusting, racist nonsense you have ever heard. Unless you happen to live in the Deep South during segregation. Sarah Jung tweeted, "Dumbass fucking white people marking up the internet with their opinions like dogs pissing on fire hydrants. Hashtag cancel white people." Showed up in another one of her gross tweets, along with a chart showing how a man's whiteness directly correlates to how awful he is. Three guesses which side of Kavanaugh debate she was on. The New York Times failed to do anything about this racist, misandrist on their staff because this way of thinking is completely acceptable these days. In fact, if you don't think white people, and men in particular, are less than human, you're the weird one. Have they even considered how this appears to be marching very quickly back to 1931 Alabama? Lord save us, because there's no way I could handle living among such ignorance. Reading about it is hard enough. Why would anyone want to go back there? The Scottsboro boys never got justice. Haywood Patterson was sentenced to death 3 times at 3 different trials, even though Ruby Bates came clean and confessed that it was all a lie. The wicked Price refused to tell the truth and sent all 9 to prison. Patterson escaped prison in 1949 and was apprehended in Michigan, where a moral governor refused to extradite him back to the insane state of Alabama. He died serving a prison sentence for a bar fight not long after. Clarence Norris got a life sentence and was pardoned in 1976. Andrew White was sentenced to 99 years and was paroled in 1950. Charlie Weems was sentenced to 105 years and was paroled in 1943. Ozzie Powell got 20 years for assault and was paroled in 1946. The rest of the boys had the charges dropped in 1937 after spending 6 years in jail. All these men had their lives stolen from them because of the forked tongues of lying women. And that was the first chapter of part 2. And I apologize, Marloka. I totally brushed off you being a member. Thank you for being a Big Vices member. I really, really appreciate the support. We like to chill, play games, sometimes be chaotic, but most importantly, we enjoy each other's company. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Lisa G. Good night, Connor. Well, I hope you're having a good night. Lisa Hines. Hello, hello. 79 Cecilia. Good morning. At least for me. I think you should be asleep. Maybe. Maybe not. Who knows? Heroes Chris Painting Corner. Emu Crew. Georgie, and Mr. Coop say hello. Well, hello to you, Georgie, and Mr. Coop. Hello, Angela Quinn. Good morning. Or good evening, whatever it is. And Danielle, thank you for the 5 Vice Baby gifted memberships. I really appreciate that. Looks like Lisa Hines, Jem, Libby, Seeking Justice, and Anna got those. So if any of you guys are in chat, Please say thank you to Danielle and welcome to the squad. Heroes Chris Painting Corner. Thanks for the support. Oh yeah, for sure. Thank you, thank you. Lisa Hines, what was that? What's what? I'll move on to the next chapter after I answer Lisa's question. Hello, Dark Lotus. Nice reading of some of the heaviest storytelling I have heard in a while, brother. Thanks for reading this, Connor. No problem. Thanks for being here, Dark Lotus. Yeah, I forgot to give another disclaimer in the beginning. Megan Fox does not give a shit what you think. If she wants to say stuff, she will say it. She'll get her point across no matter the cost. So, there will be language that may not be suitable for all users. So, listener discretion is advised. Sleep? Oh, yeah. What sleep? True. The world would never know if Connor will catch up on sleep or not. Very true. But yeah, this is one of the reasons why Megan Fox is one of the greatest person I know. If she's passionate enough about a subject and she wants you to listen, she can make you listen, whether you like it or not. You asked, she answered. So, this is her way of answering the feminist group that went downhill. She doesn't bullshit? Exactly. Exactly. Okay. And I will stop right there and then continue to the next chapter. Excuse me. Tawana Brawley. White women are not the sole perpetrators of false allegations. All women are capable of lying and ruining men's lives. Tawana Brawley was just such a girl who went missing from her home in Whippingers Falls, New York, on November 24th, 1987. She was found on November 28th, 4 days later, wrapped in a garbage bag, smeared in feces, her body covered in racial epithets. She appeared unresponsive and unconscious and was taken to a hospital, where a full examination and rape kit were administered. Her physical condition did not meet any assault or exposure to the elements as she claimed. She was also faking her unconsciousness, which doctors figured out fairly quickly. She would change her story a few times from rape to other sexual abuse she told investigators happened while she was held in the woods for 4 days by 6 white men. One of them was a well known prosecutor, and another a police officer. The community outrage grew to epic proportions. In an ironic twist, Bill Cosby offered $25,000 reward for any information on Brawley's rapists. One wonders which girl he was drugging and raping later that night. Like Mayala Ewell, Brawley is somewhat of a pitiable subject because it is believed she originated her tale out of fear that her reportedly abusive parents would find out she had disobeyed them. As young as she was at the time, only 15, youth and ignorance played a very big part in her actions. Whether she acted alone or had help is unclear. To this day, she still maintains that she was gang raped by 6 white men, although she refused to cooperate with the grand jury investigation that set out to prove the facts. She also was sued by at least one victim and was ordered to pay him restitution, very little of which she has actually paid. There was no evidence that any crime had occurred, but the usual race hustlers like Al, Al Sharpton, in particular, turned her tall tale into a national shame that caused racial upheaval and destroyed innocent men. The grand jury report issued in January 1987 was a scathing contradiction of Brawley's account and an indictment of those who had used her for political gain. I believe if I believe if a fair investigation was ever done, there will be a similar result in the Kavanaugh v. Ford affair. Who doesn't want federal investigations crawling all over Dianne Feinstein's office to find out what she was really up to? Robert Abrams, then Attorney General of New York, was appointed to special prosecutor by Governor Mario Cuomo. The report he issued after an exhaustive investigation that lasted 8 months took testimony from over 180 witnesses and contained more than 250 exhibits for evidence exonerated the accused and showed Brawley to be a liar. Perhaps worse, Sharpton had accused the law enforcement agencies of partaking in a vast cover up, including using the KKK and the Irish Mafia. It was truly absurd and outrageous behavior. The New York Times did a great video on the case that is still on YouTube, which shows video evidence of Sharpton just making stuff up out of thin air, including defaming a man who had committed suicide. Dead men can't defend themselves, so his family had to bear not only the loss of their son, but the shame of false accusations and national outrage. The grand jury report is worth reading to see the depths of the damage that one liar can unleash on the world. After these 3 months of After these months of investigation, the grand jury found no evidence that a crime had been committed against Tawana Brawley and returned no indictments. The grand jury did, however, approve a detailed and thorough report concerning the allegations made by Miss Brawley, her family, and her advisors. Public release of this report was authorized by State Supreme Court Justice Angelo J. Ingracia. At the time the grand jury report was released, I expressed publicly my strong view that the advisors to Tawana Brawley, Reverend Al Sharpton, and lawyers Alton H. Maddox, Jr., and C. Vernon Mason had engaged in an utterly reckless, dishonest, and destructive course of conduct. In particular, I found it appealing. I found it appalling that members of the bar would behave in such an irresponsible fashion, and I chose to file disciplinary charges concerning Mr. Maddox and Mr. Mason with the appropriate grievance committees. In these letters, I outlined repeated instances where I believed the lawyers violated disciplinary rules governing the conduct of attorneys. The behavior by Brawley's attorneys was so bad that Maddox and Mason were both sued successfully by one of the accused and had to pay thousands in damages. They also faced disciplinary actions by the New York State Bar Association. Maddox had his law license suspended, and Mason was disbarred. Sharpton was the only one who emerged somehow unscathed. His only defense is to say he believed her. Molly continues to claim that the rape happened. Her background suggests that she was an abusive child who suffered a great deal at the hands of her stepfather, according to the New York Times. 9 sources, including neighbors and police officials, told the grand jury of the violent quarrels in the King Brawley household. Glenda Brawley had beaten her daughter for running away and spending nights with boys, investigators were told. And there were numerous reports of fighting, specifically between Mr. King and Miss Brawley. When she was arrested on shoplifting charges the previous May, the police had to intervene to prevent Mr. King from beating her at a police station. The grand jury also heard testimony of the strains between Miss Brawley and Mr. King. One witness said Mr. King would watch her exercise and talked about the girl in a real sexual way, sometimes describing her as a fine fox. Other witness said Miss Brawley referred to Mr. King as a filthy pervert. Brawley appeared to have spent those 4 missing days running from her abusive stepfather and squatting in an apartment that her family had been of kicked out of for non-payment. There were many indications that she had been in the apartment. An acid wash denim jacket she had been wearing when she vanished was found inside a washing machine. Feces like those found on Miss Brawley, were on the jacket. Residues of burned clothing, similar to the scorched jeans she was wearing when found, were also discovered in the apartment. One pink slip on shoe she was wearing had KKK carved in the toe. A razor blade that could have been used to cut these initials was found in the apartment. There are many reasons why a woman might lie about sexual assault. Fear of sexual and physical abuse is certainly one of them. Brawley's story is tragic. One can't help but feel empathy for her pitiable condition in life. Worse, it seems the adult around her led her down a path that would destroy the lives of innocent people. More than one witness overheard Brawley's mother admit to lying about what happened. Mrs. Brawley even spent time in prison for refusing to testify before the grand jury. The psychologist informed the grand jury that certain facts of this case pointed to false allegations, among them the victim's inability to remember details of the event. If that sounds familiar to you, when you may remember Dr. Ford's testimony of the alleged assault, where she could remember nothing except that she claims she had 1 beer. Elements of her story also changed several times, including how many people were at the party. Sometimes there were 4, then it was 7, and some number in between. Ford also claimed that she had put a second front door in her home because of her PTSD issues. Ford also claimed to have fought with her husband over installing a second front door in her home in 2012. This argument was so bad she had to tell her therapist about it, and during that counseling session, she claimed she told the therapist it was because of some trauma she suffered at the hands of a high school student who could one day be Supreme Court Justice. But records show that she had that door installed in 2008, and it is used as a primary entrance and exit of renters she had had since the remodel. How exactly is a second front door supposed to help your claustrophobia and PTSD if you can't access it without going through your renter's home? And why would you be arguing about it in marriage therapy 4 years after the door was installed? Dr. Forrest's testimony raised far more questions than it answered, much like Tawana Brawley's tale of woe. All allegations with severe consequences to the accused should be properly vetted and not politicized. Ignoring red flags, like a failure to remember key details, does no one any good. In Brawley's case, she is a sympathetic girl, subjected to the things no child should ever face, and one wonders if her actions stemmed from survival instinct. The true villains of the story were her mother, stepfather, and the political hustlers who used her for their own gain. Dr. Ford shares some of that pitiable nature with Brawley, although far less so as she is a grown woman who should know better. But if it's true that she requested her information to be kept confidential and did not wish to go public with her allegations, like she claimed, then the hate hustlers have done it again. If we ever found out who in Dianne Feinstein's office leaked Dr. Ford's letter to the press, they should face serious consequences for using a woman as a pawn to take down a political foe. I think Senator John Kennedy said it best during the confirmation hearings. To the person who leaked Dr. Ford's letter, to the person who breached Dr. Ford's anonymity, and to the person who did not tell her she could have avoided this by testifying privately in her home in California, you know who you are. You should bow your head in shame, in my opinion, and you should hide your head in a bag every day for the rest of your natural life. And that was the second chapter. I almost said episode. Uh, it's Chad. Here is Chad. She doesn't bullshit. That is very true. Dark Lotus, Megan is dogged and direct about her research and writing, for sure. For sure. Too many people streaming at the same time. Hi all. Hello, Jill. Welcome. Uh, Thank you, Angela, for the $10 super chat. Appreciate you. As usual, energy drink money, because Vice Baby may never catch up on sleep, and we enjoy his smooth voice and great streams. Thank you for the support. And yeah, that was the first two chapters of part two of Believe Evidence, the death of the process from Salome to Me Too. Let me actually drop the link real quick for book. Right there. Boop. Copy link. Right there. So if you guys like to buy a copy, I have pinned it at the top of the chat. Ah, okay. Yeah, like my opinion has not changed. Like this book actually caught my attention after I started reading it. Hello, Melissa. Good evening. And honestly, I do enjoy reading this book. It's just Megan has to be so fancy to use big words that is hard to pronounce for a newbie reader like me. Yeah, it's just I say this every episode. It's amazing how much research she does to find all these cases and actually write in detail and connecting previous stories as well to the current story that she's writing. But yeah, this is the start of part two. And to people who are wondering, there is three parts in total. And I believe I said there's 14 chapters in this part, so it'll be a fun ride. Oh, let's see who I can redirect you to. Someone who is not doing Karen Read. I assume no one's doing Karen Read right now. Do. Live. Customization. Redirect. To. Okay. Sweet. I will send you to the goat cam so you guys can. Oh, do you want to do MG Law? We can either do MG Law or go to the goat cam to slowly relax. Hello, been there, done that. Which one would you guys like? Would you guys like, let's do number one for Goat Cam and number two for MG Law. Either or. Okay. Sweet. Okay, then I'll change the redirect. Awesome. Okay, I'll switch to MG Law. Okay, Ben, of course. Of course you'd go out and have to mess up everything. Bloop bloop. Oh, that was already done. Sweet. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for okay, Dark Lungs. Thank you so much for joining in on this late night reading session with me of Megan Fox's Believe Evidence, The Death of Due Process from Salome to Me Too. You look nice in your dad's hat. Thank you, Lisa. Nice, Bill. But I hope you guys have a wonderful morning, evening, night, wherever you are. Stay lovely, stay beautiful. The next reading session will be the same time, so it'll be next week, next Saturday. It'll be another late night reading session. So I hope you guys have a good one. Again, stay beautiful, stay lovely. Hit like button and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And if you are subscribed, please double check that you still are because YouTube is asshole and likes to kick people out. So with that, I love you guys. I'll see you later. Bye bye.
Well, that's all for this stream, but it's been so sweet. Thanks for hanging with us. It's been a treat. We'll keep it warm, keep it real, take it slow. Catch you next time when the vibes are ready to flow. If you enjoyed the ride, give us a like, subscribe for the warmth. Come back whenever you like. Until then, take it easy. Don't rush, don't hurry. I'll be here waiting. No need to worry. Vice, baby, always by your side. Stay cozy, stay calm, let the good times ride. Peace for now, but we'll meet again. Take care, my friend. Until then.